This video is going to be something a little bit different, something more personal. Today I want to tell you about the 5 books that made me a reader. Maybe not the best books I've ever read, the most critically acclaimed, and maybe not the books I'd put on the best of list just to sound impressive. These are the books that mean a lot to me. Think of this less as a book recommendation video and more of a reading anthology for Blake's Books. 5 chapters of my life as a reader. Welcome back to Blake's Books. My name is Blake, and today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. No reviews, no vlogs, just 5 very important books or book series in my life. So let's go back to the beginning. I was in a bookshop with my mom, and this was the first time that we lived in the UK. I was maybe 9 or 10, and I just remember seeing this book on a bookshelf. I honestly don't remember what store it was, but it had a mouse with a sword and shield on the cover, and I just knew that I had to have it. And just from that statement, you might already know what book I'm talking about. Redwall by Brian Jacques. Just having this book in my hands, just every time I look at it on the bookshelf, I just get such warm feelings. It's well used, well loved. This is actually the copy that I picked up with my mom on that day. This is a printing from June of 1998. It even smells great. That smell of bibliosmia. I just get so many good feelings holding this book. And I just remember at that age thinking about books as something that I had to read in school, and books never really occurred to me as like a fun thing. I just know that adults read books and the books that they read were probably boring, so I never really looked at them, to be honest with you. And there was just something about this cover. I mean, just look at it. This little mouse holding a sword and a shield. There's snakes on the sides, and then there's this, like, honestly really cool looking mouse. I didn't even know his name at the time, but it just spoke to me. And there was something about this book that I just had to have. I mean, it was a mouse with a sword and shield on the cover, you know, that's all it took. So I asked my mom if I could have it, and luckily she said yes. Now, if you're unfamiliar with Redwall, it follows a mouse named Matthias. This is our little boy on the cover, as he protects the Redwall Abbey from Clooney the Scourge, this one-eyed rat, and his massive army. Now, obviously, throughout the 22 books, that all changes. There's so many different stories and viewpoints, but book 1, Redwall, that is the main plot. And in the world of Redwall, all of the characters are basically woodland creatures. We're talking rabbits, badgers, snakes, mice, rats, so on and so forth. It's hard to put into words what I felt at that age. It was so long ago that obviously I don't remember everything. But I just remember reading this book and starting to understand what a story was, like what reading a book was all about. And something that I didn't really expect was I didn't just like the book, I basically fell into this story. The Redwall Abbey, the feasts, the dialects, all of the different animal-based characters. I mean, I just fell headfirst into this world. So think of it as a fantasy realm, fantasy universe, but everyone is an animal basically. And it might sound kind of cheesy, I guess, no pun intended, but it really is a real story with real characters, great character plots, character development. There's stakes, there's scary moments. I mean, there's actual like villains. It felt both magical and real at the same time. One thing I always remember is reading the descriptions of the food in this book and the series and just being genuinely hungry. So this is a quote from page 10, very early on in the book. It says, "Bring me white gooseberry wine. Fetch me some rosemary, thyme, beech nuts, and honey quickly. And fresh cream. I need lots of fresh cream. Bring some mint leaves too." And I believe that this is seasoning for a fish that they're cooking up for a feast at the Abbey. I think what's really cool about this series is, yes, the characters are animals. Yes, it's technically a children's book, but it honestly doesn't feel like a children's book. I don't feel like Brian Jacques writes down to his readers. There's real stakes involved, characters that you love, there's real peril in these stories. And in my opinion, the world that Brian Jacques built over the 22 novels is one of the most complete and comforting places in all of fiction. Redwall didn't just give me a good book or a good story, it gave me proof that books were cool, and that books could actually be a place that you want to live for a while. And I think that's what gave me that joy, the escapist feeling of diving into fantasy and then later science fiction. You basically get to be somewhere else for a little bit. And in my opinion, the best stories that I've read are ones that when I finish the book or the series, I genuinely miss being in that world. And after reading this and finishing the series as a young reader, I have been chasing that feeling ever since. Book 2 is Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone by J.K. Rowling. I know what you're saying. Everybody has a Harry Potter story. And this world, this series has blown up to insane levels in the modern day. But when I look at this cover, I still imagine myself as a little kid, and the memories that it brings back are genuinely nostalgic. So just like Redwall, I was still living in the UK when this series came out, and I remember walking into a large bookstore, and right at the front, right when you walk in, was a table that was absolutely laden with Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. Now above the table there was just this huge poster that had this book and basically a blurb about the author and what the story was about. And there were dozens and dozens of this book stacked high. And at that age, I didn't know what this was. I just thought that clearly it was a big deal and the bookshop thought that I should have it. And they were right. Now, what Harry Potter did for myself and likely many, many, many other readers, although I think it's easy to forget because it's so embedded in our culture with the movies, video games, the area at Universal, I mean, it's everywhere. But I think what was cool about Harry Potter, if you were a young reader or a teenager at the time, is every time the next book in a series was released, it felt like a cultural event. People were queuing up at bookstores at midnight. I even asked my parents a couple times if we could wait in line at midnight, although I never got the chance. People cried. People argued about theories for years and trying to predict what would happen in the next book. And it's hard to think about now because all of the books have been out, the movies have been out for years. Most people know the story of Harry Potter. And at that time, I had already been reading Redwall, so I already knew that I loved books, but now suddenly everybody else was loving books too, especially kids my age. And that was new. That was something special. It was no longer just me reading books alone as an only child, but now all of my friends were talking about books and I could talk about it with them. And the last thing I'll mention about Harry Potter was connection to Harry. At the time, I was around the same age that Harry was in book 1. As the books came out, I got older and Harry got older. So it kind of felt like we were sharing the same timeline in a weird way. And Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone is seen as a children's book and maybe book 2 as well, but kind of from book 3 and on, it turns into more of a young adult series. It gets more serious. And I think that's a pretty rare phenomenon for a piece of fiction to achieve. Book 3 is Eragon by Christopher Paolini. Man, just holding this book just brings back so many memories, just like Redwall. This is the original copy I got back in 2003, and you can tell it's very well loved. It's kind of fallen apart a little bit, which makes me sad, but also kind of makes me happy. There's just something about a well-loved book that you just look at it and just brings up so many memories. Now, the summary for Eragon reads like this. An Alagaësia, a 15-year-old boy of unknown lineage named Eragon, finds a mysterious stone that weaves his life into an intricate tapestry of destiny, magic, and power, peopled with dragons, elves, and monsters. Eventually, Eragon becomes a dragon rider and fights evil and saves people and all of those good things. Now, in 2003, I was a young teenager, so I had done some growing up after reading Redwall and started Harry Potter. For any fantasy lover, just seeing a cover with a beautiful blue dragon on it was enough for me, to be honest with you. But I also found out that Christopher Paolini wrote this book when he was 15. 15. That's just a little bit older than the age that I was in 2003. And that kind of blew my mind a little bit. Books were things that adults wrote. And maybe when I got older, that's something that I could achieve as well. The idea that someone around my age could write such an awesome story about dragons and dragon riders and evil and magic was just truly awesome. And I know that Eragon has become a worldwide phenomenon now, but at the time it was something brand new. And honestly, the story was just so good. I was so hooked into Eragon. And then now as I'm older, I can understand where all of the influences from this story came from. We're talking Tolkien, Star Wars, and McCaffrey. But in my opinion, Christopher Paolini took those influences and built something that was genuinely his own. I think that the relationship between Eragon and Saphira, his dragon, is one of the great bonds in all of fantasy. But one of the main reasons why Eragon is on this list is that it made me want to write. I had been devouring books for years, but I had never tried to write anything of my own. So I started writing my own story. And I think it was sometime after book 2, I got inspired to write my own story. And if you are a PC gamer like I am, right around 2005, there was a certain game that came out that took the world by storm. That's right, World of Warcraft. The first story I ever wrote was World of Warcraft fan fiction, and it is not good. I still have the printed out, I guess, first like 5 chapters that I wrote, and every now and then I just go back and read it, and it's pretty hilarious. So I want to be clear that it was not good, but at the time it was so exciting. I was just writing my own story, and I had these characters that I truly thought were cool, and they had great character development, but there was definitely some maturing to do. But I was doing it. I was a teenager writing stories. And then now into adulthood, I still love writing. I'm working on a book right now just in secret, and I still love the process. And I feel like if I hadn't read Eragon and got that inspiration from Christopher Paolini, I never would have started writing in the first place. And I think that that's what a book can do if it finds you in the right moment. It might not just tell you a story, but it can tell you what is possible. Book 4. Book 4 is a little bit different because it's not just one book, but more a universe. We're talking Warhammer 40k and Warhammer Fantasy. Now, I have a video on this channel specifically talking about books to start reading in Warhammer 40k if you are new to the setting. Now, behind me, spread out among these bookshelves, which you can't really see all of it right now. Maybe I'll do a bookshelf tour one day when I organize my bookshelf a little better. But there are over 100 Warhammer Fantasy and Warhammer 40k books among those shelves. So this is where we start to get into what I call adult reading. So this is the second time that I lived in the UK. We moved back there when I was a little bit older, into my teens, like 15, 16 years old. And if you're unfamiliar with Games Workshop or Warhammer, the company is based out of the UK. So the UK was, at the time, I'm not sure about now, was kind of like the mecca of Warhammer. And these were the first adult books that I had read. And I mean that literally. My parents didn't really know what I was buying, and honestly, I didn't really know either. This is the first Warhammer fantasy book I picked up, Riders of the Dead by Dan Abnett, one of the greatest, if not the greatest, authors for Warhammer. I saw this in a Games Workshop when I was looking at the models, and I mean, the cover is just sweet. So I bought and read this and was pretty much hooked immediately. One of the next Warhammer books I bought was Fell Cargo by Dan Abnett as well. This tiny little pirate book means so much to me. Every time I see it, I just laugh because it just made me fall in love with Warhammer fantasy. Of course, I have to mention the Gotrek and Felix series by William King. If you want to read Warhammer fantasy, read the Gotrek and Felix series. You will not be disappointed. I think it's one of the best, if not the best, series in Warhammer Fantasy. Now, the first Warhammer 40k book that I bought was Soul Drinkers by Ben Counter. This is where things started to get dark. Warhammer Fantasy is fairly dark, but 40k, in my opinion, is where everything just kind of goes next level. The Warhammer setting is one of the bleakest, most unforgiving settings in all of fiction. The tagline is literally, "In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war." And as a 15, 16-year-old, I hadn't really read anything that was genuinely that dark or gritty before. War, death, moral ambiguity, villains with coherent worldviews, doing terrible things for justifiable reasons. Nothing was clean, nothing was simple, but it was so cool. After years of reading children's books like Redwall and Harry Potter, and YA books like the later Harry Potter books and Eragon, I felt like these books were treating me as an adult you know, they weren't really protecting me from uncomfortable outcomes. Book 5 is Leviathan Wakes by James S.A. Corey. Now, book 5 fast forwards the timeline by quite a bit. In my early 20s, college age, into mid 20s, I still loved reading, but I definitely put less time into it. I had tons of friends, I was an adult doing adult things, and I just didn't quite have the same time for reading that I did as a kid. My reading pace definitely slowed, but it didn't stop completely. I just had other things filling up my time in my life as a young adult, which is very normal. But there was one book, one series that brought it all back for me and reminded me why I love reading, and specifically science fiction. That book is Leviathan Wakes by James S.A. Corey. If you have spent any time on this channel before, you have probably heard me mention this series, and I'll probably mention it many times in the future because I will take any opportunity to put this series in front of as many people as I can. The Expanse is 9 novels set a few hundred years into the future. Humanity has colonized much of the solar system but hasn't ventured out beyond its home star. Earth, Mars, and the asteroid belt exist in a state of Cold War tension. Now, obviously, a lot of things happen in those 9 books, but in my opinion, the Expanse series is one of the most realistic depiction of humanity's future in space. Now, I'm not going to spoil it, but something happens that changes everything. Now, James S.A. Corey is actually a pen name for 2 writers, Daniel Abraham and Ty Frank. Now, the world that they built has the patience of Tolkien and the political intrigue of Game of Thrones, but is grounded in actual human psychology and actual consequences. Because this is not too far from where we are now, so the stakes feel real. And when something happens in The Expanse, something happens to a character, it ripples through the series and the solar system. Characters die with weight, and everyone's actions mean something. And the characters Holden, Naomi, Amos, and Alex are, in my opinion, one of the greatest ensemble of characters in science fiction. Amos Burton alone is worth the price of reading 9 books. Now, I ask this question to people a lot. If you could only recommend one series to people for the rest of your life, just one series, what would it be? And for me, that is The Expanse by James S.A. Corey. And that is not hyperbole. That is my genuine opinion, my genuine response. So if you haven't read this yet, go read it. If you haven't seen the show, go watch the show. The show is also fantastic. So, 5 books: a mouse with a sword, a boy on a broom, dragons, and a 15-year-old that taught me that I could be a writer too, a dark universe that my parents did not know I was reading about at the time, and the sci-fi series that brought me back home. Now, I'll be honest with you, the books that made me a reader is obviously larger than just 5. There are so many series that have shaped me over the years into the reader that I am today, like The Wheel of Time, Stormlight Archives, The Black Company, the list just goes on and on. But I just wanted to pick 5 of the most important series in my reading journey, but I would love to know your story. Drop it in the comments. Let me know what book, what series that you think made you a reader. And if you're new to the channel, thanks for coming. This is kind of what we do on the channel. We do recommendations, reviews, and sometimes I get slightly emotional over fictional mice. If you're interested in some longer format vlog style videos, I'm currently vlogging my way through the Red Rising series. Book 2, Golden Sun, is now finished and posted on the channel. So if you want to see a newbie's journey through Red Rising, I will link the playlist either in the description or in the video. Not quite sure how that works yet, but it'll be somewhere. Like the video if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you want to see more, and I will catch you in the next one.